Hey friends, tonight's story is a bit unusual, a bit sleepy, and probably not what you had in mind. It's called Medieval Girls and Strange Beauty Rituals. Before you settle in, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I share here. And if you're listening right now, drop a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I always love seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, go ahead and dim the lights. Maybe switch on a fan for that soft background hum, and let yourself drift into tonight's strange little journey. You didn't just stumble into a great moment in history. No, you wandered into something quieter and far more peculiar. You are a young girl in a small medieval village. The air is cool, sometimes damp, and faintly scented with hay, wood smoke, and the not-so-distant smells of animals. You spend most of your days moving slowly from one chore to another, each one slightly monotonous, but all necessary. There is no rush like we know today. The sun rises, the rooster crows, and everyone begins their tasks in a rhythm as steady and predictable as the tolling of the church bells. You wake early, though the concept of waking early is a little different here, since the day begins, which often means whenever the sun peers over the thatched roofs. You dress in simple woolen tunics, coarse and warm, layered over linen, undergarments that are sometimes itchy, sometimes scratchy, depending on the laundry day. Your shoes are basic, practical, and always a little dusty, or worse, a little muddy, and they make quiet squeaks as you step over uneven stones. From the moment you can remember, your mother or an older sister has been teaching you the small, detailed rituals of looking proper. It begins with posture, standing just so, hands folded, chin slightly lifted, and shoulders relaxed, but not too relaxed. There are no mirrors in most homes, so lessons are mostly about touch and repetition. Hold your hands straight, she says. Fold your hands neatly, and over the years, you learn to do it almost automatically, as if your body itself remembers better than your mind. This is your first education in the slow, deliberate world of medieval beauty. Food and chores are interwoven with these lessons. While kneading dough or grinding grains, your mother instructs you on how to keep your hands clean, or at least as clean as possible. She points out the importance of washing them before serving food, not just for cleanliness, but so the neighbor ladies will notice your diligence. Even in these early years, you understand that every small action contributes to the perception of propriety. Some of it feels mysterious, and some of it feels entirely arbitrary. But you follow along carefully, because every instruction is repeated slowly, and each repetition imprints itself gently, like a quiet rhythm in the back of your mind. As the morning stretches into afternoon, the village stirs with its usual quiet activity. Women carry baskets of eggs or freshly churned butter. Children run lightly across the stones, and men move to fields or workshops. You notice the smells of bread baking, the faint scent of herbs drying on window ledges, and the occasional tints of animal pens. It is not unpleasant, exactly, but it is persistent. There is no escape from the combination of scents, no perfume strong enough yet to mask them, but you do not mind. You are young, and your senses are slowly adjusting to this world, one scent, one texture, one lesson at a time. Even now, at the very beginning of your life, there is a quiet awareness that these days are the foundation of everything that will come later. The slow, meticulous instructions about posture, cleanliness, and attentiveness are the groundwork for learning more intricate, more peculiar rituals that you will encounter in the years ahead. This is the time when small actions are remembered, when small touches and repetitive routines form the first rhythm of your existence. And though it is mundane, though it is drawn out, though it is a little tedious, it is here that the story of a medieval girl begins quiet, detailed, and endlessly patient. Later, you will learn about hair care, skin treatments, strange potions, and the peculiar ways girls were instructed to appear beautiful. But for now, you sit in the gentle, steady cadence of your village life, absorbing lessons, not through urgency, but through careful, repeated observation. Each day is a practice, each task a tiny building block, and each slow, repeated instruction becomes a part of the rhythm that carries you forward. You may not notice it yet, but the world is shaping you, and it does so in whispers, in gestures, and in the faint but persistent guidance of the women around you. And so, as the sun climbs higher, as your small hands learn the first lessons of order and propriety, as you begin to understand that every subtle movement and every quiet repetition matters in its own way, you settle into the gentle, slow flow of your life. It is monotonous, yes, but it is fascinating in its own peculiar way. And from this quiet beginning, the story of medieval girls and their strange, drawn-out beauty rituals will unfold, slowly, patiently, and in excruciatingly precise detail. The kind of detail that makes time stretch, the kind of detail that helps your mind drift, like the soft hum of the village surrounding you. You begin to notice, almost immediately, that growing up as a medieval girl involves a constant, slow, and deliberate education in appearance. From the moment you can walk across the uneven stones of your village, your mother, or sometimes an older sister or aunt, teaches you how to hold yourself properly. You learn to stand with shoulders relaxed, chin slightly raised, hands folded at the front, fingers together, not too stiff, not too loose, Each instruction is repeated carefully, over and over, sometimes with tiny variations, until your body seems to remember what your mind might forget. The posture lessons are not just about looking presentable. They are meant to instill patience, discipline, and the subtle understanding that small movements, repeated countless times, shape how the world perceives you. Even at this age, the rhythm of instruction is slow and methodical. You notice the patterns, the gentle corrections, the tiny sighs of approval or gentle admonishment. And you begin to feel that every gesture, however minor, is a small building block in a larger design you do not yet fully comprehend. These lessons are reinforced by chores and daily life, while carrying buckets of water from the well, kneading dough, or sweeping the hearth. You are reminded to keep your hands neat, your movements measured, and your gaze polite. Even your small failures are instructive. A dropped bucket, a spilled grain, or a momentary slip of posture becomes an opportunity for slow correction. You learn, for example, that hands that are constantly dirty from chores must be wiped or rubbed with cloth to appear cleaner when passing food to neighbors or guests. It is a world where perception matters as much as practicality, and every mundane task becomes intertwined. Historical records suggest that young girls were often taught these routines from the earliest age, though how strictly this was enforced varied widely, class, and the whims of local families, leaving some scholars to debate the precise nature of delay instruction. Commune with, and to with lease, Hugh, how the exter I you to, you did I did you make is the me step abuse hair care begins early, even if it seems tedious. You are taught how to braid, twist, or tie your hair with strips of cloth or simple ribbons. Veils are introduced at a young age for modesty, with instructions on how to fold them, drape them, and keep them in place while moving about the home or garden. Washing is infrequent, sometimes weekly, sometimes less, and often done with cold or lukewarm water that leaves strands stubborn and heavy. The act of combing or braiding and requires patience, especially when dealing with tangles. Occasionally, your mother will use a simple mixture of herbs or crushed flowers to scent your hair or make it more manageable. These practices may seem odd to a modern ear, but they are part of the rhythm of childhood and early education in appearance. Scholars today debate the prevalence of these specific practices, but surviving accounts and paintings suggest that hair care and the early use of veils were indeed common across many regions. Your dress also becomes part of these lessons. Even simple tunics must be adjusted and folded, hems checked, and fastenings secured. You are reminded to move carefully, so skirts do not snag on stones or furniture, and to maintain a graceful posture even while performing mundane chores. Clothing is both practical and symbolic. It protects, signals status, and trains you in the slow, deliberate movements expected of young women. Small mistakes in arranging garments can be noted with gentle correction, reinforcing the importance of repetition. As you grow, these routines expand to include layering garments properly, adjusting belts, and eventually adding small, decorative touches, diligence, or attention to detail. The layers, the folds, and the careful handling of fabric are all part of the early lessons in appearance that will continue for many years. Observation is also a key part of your education. You watch older women and girls as they carry out their daily routines, noting how they move, how they fold their hands, how they adjust their skirts, and how they hold their heads. Mimicking these movements slowly, repeatedly, is considered essential. Even minor deviations from proper posture or hand placement are quietly corrected over time, reinforcing the rhythm of instruction. You begin to understand that what may seem trivial or excessively meticulous is in fact the subtle art of medieval propriety. It is not about perfection, but about persistence, repetition, and the almost imperceptible shaping of behavior. These lessons are quietly pervasive, happening in the background of chores, meals, and long walks to the market, a constant rhythm that underlies the rest of your day. By the end of the morning, as the sun rises higher and the village hums with activity, you are learning to integrate all these early lessons: posture, hand placement, gestures, hair care, and careful attention to clothing. Each movement is slow and deliberate, each repetition ingrained gently into memory. Even minor successes or small failures are absorbed without rush, part of the long, methodical process of becoming a medieval girl. The slow, repetitive nature of these lessons, combined with the faint but constant smells of the village baking bread, drying herbs, and nearby animals, creates a steady, almost hypnotic rhythm that carries you through the day. It is in this careful, patient, and mildly tedious instruction propriety and personal discipline takes root. And so, as the afternoon begins and your small hands fold and refold the hems of your tunic, as your braids settle into place and your posture remains measured, you feel the gentle, persistent shaping of your early years. These lessons, slow, repetitive, and oddly soothing, will continue to expand in complexity as you grow, introducing more elaborate hairstyles, skin treatments, perfumes, and clothing rituals. For now, you simply absorb the rhythm of instruction, the quiet cadence of village life, and the subtle, persistent emphasis on appearance. This is the world of a medieval girl, drawn out, meticulously detailed, and patiently unfolding. The kind of world that stretches time just enough, like a gentle hum in the background, carrying you forward in the background, carrying you forward into the next lessons yet to come. But pre-out, trust it, like you, psych you to real, you can reuse you, with the more you spiders of that voice. As the days stretch on in your small, medieval village, you begin to notice that hair is more than just hair. It is a signal, a marker of status, of propriety, of growing up correctly in the eyes of those around you. From an early age, you are taught to braid, twist, and tie your hair in ways that are both functional and symbolic. Your mother shows you how to part strands carefully, comb tangles slowly, and wrap the remaining hair in cloth strips, ribbons, or simple veils. Each movement is deliberate, repeated, and observed with a gentle, patient eye. You learn that even a minor slip of braid undone, a ribbon askew, can subtly alter how others perceive you. Though the consequences are never shouted or severe, only quietly corrected and gently noted. Washing your hair is an event that happens infrequently, sometimes weekly, sometimes less often. The water is cold or lukewarm, drawn from a well or heated over a small fire. Soap is rare and often harsh, made from animal fats or ashes, leaving hair heavy and sticky in a way that modern ears would find unusual. Despite the discomfort, the process is slow and methodical. You carefully wet, scrub, rinse, and comb, repeating motions until the tangles loosen and the strands settle. At times, herbs such as rosemary are added, sometimes crushed, sometimes steeped, giving a faint scent that lingers like a whisper throughout the day. Historians debate exactly how widespread these herbal practices were, with some accounts suggesting they were common only among wealthier families, while others hint that even humble households when possible. Braiding is a particularly important skill, not just for neatness, but for patience, discipline, and control. You learn simple 3-strand braids first, slowly, repetitively, your fingers moving in almost hypnotic patterns. As you grow, you are introduced to more complex designs, twists, plaits, and knots that require careful attention to detail. Veils and head coverings are integrated into these styles, draped over or pinned above braids, teaching you to move gracefully even when something heavy or awkward rests upon your head. The process takes time, often a full hour for even modest arrangements, and yet it is never rushed. There is a gentle insistence that careful repetition will train your hands, your posture, and your patience, embedding a rhythm into your day that is quietly soothing. Occasionally, accidents happen. A strand slips from a braid, a ribbon comes loose, or a veil falls awkwardly, and you learn slowly to correct it without fuss. Even minor mishaps are instructive, demonstrating the need for diligence and attention, sometimes correcting themselves multiple times, and you mimic these movements quietly, absorbing the rhythm without pressure. The entire process becomes a meditative act, each twist and fold of hair a small lesson in patience and the quiet artistry of daily life. Perfumed oils or crushed herbs are sometimes applied to the hair, though sparingly. These mixtures are often fragrant, sometimes odd-smelling, and occasionally irritating to the scalp. But their use is repeated carefully under the guidance of older women. You learn which scents are considered proper, which combinations are forbidden, and which are simply curious, experimental trials. Some families insist on rosemary, others lavender, some a combination of crushed flowers or even mild spices. While the modern listener might find it peculiar, these rituals are slow, repeated, and comforting in their predictability. Scholars today note that hair perfuming practices varied widely by region and class, with some debate over how consistently certain herbs were used, leaving room for curiosity about exactly how a young girl like you might have smelled on any given day. Days perspew you, we are deny. Your why do you, we you, I you, we you, we you, we you, Veils and coverings are another layer of education. You are taught how to fold, drape, and pin them in a way that is both modest and elegant, paying attention to symmetry, tension, and alignment. They may be tied over braids, tucked under curls, or wrapped simply around the head. The act of arranging a veil is deliberate, slow, and repetitive, teaching not just skill with fingers, but an appreciation for routine and the quiet discipline of form. Even minor adjustments, slight tilts or folds, are corrected, quietly reinforcing and patience. The entire process of hair care, braiding, and veiling is interwoven with the rhythms of daily life. You might be braiding while bread rises, or combing while waiting for water to boil. These slow, repeated actions are part of the gentle cadence of your days, embedding patterns into your mind and body that will carry you through adolescence. Even the occasional distraction, sibling running past the call of a neighbor. A faint smell from the kitchen does not disrupt the underlying rhythm, which is persistent, calming, and oddly mesmerizing. By the end of the day, your hair is arranged, your braids are neat, your veil is properly draped, and you feel the quiet satisfaction of having followed a slow, meticulous routine. You have learned not only the mechanics of appearance, but the subtle, enduring lessons of patience, observation, and repetition. Each twist of hair, each fold of ribbon, each careful drape of cloth is a tiny meditation in itself, a quiet exercise in discipline and calm. It is in these repeated actions, performed slowly and with attention, that you begin to understand the medieval girl, a practice that is both mundane and peculiar, and strangely comforting in its endless repetition. And so, as the evening approaches and the village quiets, you sit with your hair arranged, feeling the soft weight of your veil and the gentle tug of braids resting against your neck. The lessons of the day are absorbed slowly, quietly, like a faint hum in the background. This is the way of medieval hair care, of odd, repeated rituals, and of learning patience and propriety, one careful twist, one slow braid, and one quiet adjustment at a time. And in this slow unfolding, you are gently carried forward to the next lessons yet to come, as your life continues in measured, peculiar, and strangely soothing rhythms. As a medieval girl, you quickly learn that appearance is not only about posture, clothing, or hair. The scents that surround you are equally important, quietly shaping perceptions, signaling propriety, and sometimes masking the more persistent odors of village life. Even at a young age, you are taught about fragrant oils, crushed herbs, and subtle powders, and you observe the careful ways older girls and women apply them. This is a slow education, gentle corrections, and quiet insistence that every motion, every rub, every sprinkle is part of the careful rhythm of proper living. Perfumes are usually simple, made from herbs, flowers, and sometimes spices. Lavender, rosemary, rose petals, and chamomile are common, occasionally blended with a hint of honey or vinegar to preserve the scent. You watch your mother crush the petals between her fingers, slowly, deliberately, letting the fragrance escape gently into the air. The crushed herbs are then rubbed into hair, onto the skin, or even into the folds of clothing. Each action is carefully measured, repeated with precision, and corrected with a soft word or a nod of approval. You learn to mimic these movements, discovering that the rhythm of preparation, the slow crushing, the gentle pressing, the repeated rubbing is just as important as the final scent. Scholars today note that the exact combinations and uses of these perfumes varied widely across regions and social classes, leaving some uncertainty about how consistent these practices, though the repetition nearly universal. Sometimes scented oils are applied directly to the skin. You are taught to rub a small amount onto the hands, the neck, or the face, avoiding areas that might become irritated or greasy. It is slow, meticulous work. Too much, and the scent is overwhelming. Too little, and it is ineffective. You adjust, repeat, and practice until it feels just right. You also observe the subtle social cues. A guest entering the room, the presence of a neighbor, or the quiet inspection of a passing relative, all subtly influencing how, when, and where scents are applied. Even in this, there is a rhythm, a slow cadence that becomes part of your daily routine. Crushed herbs may also be sprinkled into linen or bedding. You notice the faint aroma that lingers on sheets, in veils, or around the room, softening the harsher scents of animals, cooking fires, or damp floors. The application is repetitive. A pinch here, a sprinkle there, pressing gently into fabric, letting the scent slowly settle. Over time, you become aware of the nuanced difference, which combinations are considered elegant, which are deemed too strong, and which are experimental, producing effects that are sometimes pleasing, sometimes peculiar. Even now, the act of slowly crushing, rubbing, and pressing becomes meditative, an early form of quiet discipline that intertwines with daily chores and village life. In addition to herbs, some families attempt more elaborate perfumes, using distilled waters or oils infused with rare flowers. These are less common, more expensive, and often reserved for noble households. But they still influence what you hear about, see, or aspire to emulate. The slow rituals surrounding these more complex scents are longer, sometimes taking an hour or more for full preparation and application. Each step is repeated carefully. Measure, crush, infuse, rub, adjust. Too much distillation, or the wrong flower, results in an overpowering smell that is gently noted but never harshly scolded. You begin to understand, even as a young girl, that mastery comes slowly through repetition, attention, and a calm awareness of detail. Scents are also part of social interaction. Before visiting a neighbor or attending a small village gathering, you are instructed to apply the appropriate fragrance. Too faint, and you may appear careless. Too strong, and it may offend. These lessons are repeated over and over, often with gentle demonstrations, where your mother or an older girl slowly applies the scent to herself, then to you, until you begin to internalize the rhythm. Each motion, the pinch, the rub, the gentle pressing, as important as the scent itself, a key. It is the combination of slow repetition and delicate attention to detail that trains you to navigate the subtle social world of the village. Occasionally, scents are used to mask illness or other unpleasant odors in the home. You observe older girls and women carefully applying herbs or scented oils near the hearth, the water containers, or even around sleeping areas. The act is slow and deliberate. A quiet reassurance, however minor, is a skill to cultivate. Historical accounts suggest that some practices were regional or occasional, while others were habitual, leaving room for debate among scholars about how widespread certain fragrant rituals truly were. Regardless, the rhythm, repetition, and slow care involved are consistent across accounts. By evening, after hours of slow, repetitive practice, you sit quietly with the faint aroma of lavender or rosemary clinging to your hair, hands, and clothing. The scents are subtle, comforting, and oddly meditative. Each pinch, each rub, each gentle adjustment has taught patience, attention, and rhythm, embedding the slow patterns of propriety deeply into your daily life. You begin to recognize that this is not just about smell, but about control, subtlety, and awareness, the gentle shaping of your presence in a world that moves slowly and expects meticulous care. And so, as the village quiets and the air cools, you carry the lessons of scent with you, the slow, repetitive preparation, the careful application, the subtle adjustment, and the quiet observation of how even the faintest aroma influences perception. These rituals, peculiar as they may seem, are calming in their repetition and comforting in their predictability. They are the foundation for further lessons in medieval beauty, a prelude to the oddities of skincare, clothing, and more intricate rituals that will continue to unfold in the coming days. As you grow a little older, you begin to notice that medieval beauty is not only about hair and scent, but also about the skin you carry with you. From early childhood, your mother or an older woman quietly teaches you the slow, repetitive rituals meant to keep your skin soft, smooth, and presentable in a world where harsh work and constant exposure to the elements make this an ongoing challenge. These lessons are deliberate, methodical, and often peculiar, involving ingredients and techniques that may seem strange to modern ears, but which are repeated gently, carefully, and with patient guidance. You learn first about simple washes. Water is scarce, soap is harsh, and bathhouses are uncommon. So most cleaning is done with cool water drawn from the well, sometimes mixed with crushed herbs or flower petals. Lavender, rosemary, and chamomile are common choices, lightly steeped to release gentle aromas. Each washing is slow, deliberate. Splash, rub, rinse, repeat. Fingers trace each part of the skin carefully as your teacher points out rough patches, calluses, or areas that need extra attention. A rough elbow, noted quietly, never scolded, and there scolded, and the process is repeated until it becomes second nature, a rhythm embedded in daily life. Scholars note that while exact ingredients varied, the emphasis on repetitive care and subtle attention was common across regions, though some debate remains about the accessibility of superior households. Creams and ointments introduce a new level of ritual. Animal fats, honey, and crushed herbs are combined into pastes or balms, sometimes scented with flowers, sometimes left unperfumed. You are taught how to apply them slowly, rubbing gently in circles, covering each exposed patch of skin, and smoothing with careful repetition. These treatments are often left on for hours or overnight, absorbed gradually. You notice the faint, persistent smell of honey or fat clinging to your skin, and the way the gentle friction warms and softens it. The rhythm of these slow movements, repeated over days and weeks, becomes oddly comforting, a subtle cadence that links chores, meals, and social observation. Occasionally, more unusual ingredients are introduced. Crushed eggshells, powdered minerals, or even small amounts of plant-based acids are mixed into pastes or masks. These are applied cautiously with deliberate instructions to avoid irritation or burns. You watch the careful guidance of older women as they demonstrate slowly exactly how to apply, remove, and repeat. Some mixtures are slightly itchy or uncomfortable, but the process is never rushed. Each step, repeated precisely, reinforces the importance of patience, observation, and methodical care. You begin to understand that even discomfort is part of learning, and that mastery comes from slow, persistent practice. There is also a social component. Skincare is not only personal, but also a marker of readiness for future social interaction. When visiting neighbors, attending church, or taking part in small village gatherings, well-kept hands, smooth arms, and clean faces indicate diligence, propriety, and attentiveness. You are gently reminded that these slow rituals carry consequences beyond immediate appearance, and that repetition and attention to detail are quietly observed by others. Even small successes, smoother wrist, a softer cheek, a faintly fragrant smell, are recognized, reinforcing the rhythm of care. You are taught that the best results come from persistence and repetition. Each day's washing, rubbing, or application is linked to the previous day, a slow accumulation of subtle improvements. Missed steps are quietly noted, but repeated corrections embed the lessons further. You begin to notice patterns. Certain herbs are repeated at specific times of the week. Applications follow specific sequences, and even minor gestures, the direction of rubbing, the gentle pressure applied matter in a way that seems almost hypnotic. This repetition forms the core of medieval skincare education for young girls. In addition to the practical, there is also a touch of superstition. Some families add protective charms, small rituals, or whispered words while applying creams and pastes. These are repeated slowly, gently, and rhythmically, intertwining the practical and the mystical in a subtle cadence that underlies the ritual. Whether these practices were widespread or limited to particular regions or families remains debated by historians, but the combination of slow action, careful observation, and repetitive movement is consistent across accounts. By evening, after hours of slow washing, rubbing, and careful application of odd ingredients, you sit quietly with faint scents lingering, your skin slightly softened, and your hands folded in the gentle rhythm learned from years of practice. Each movement, each repetition, each slow correction has taught patience, observation, and the quietly hypnotic art of meticulous care. You begin to realize that these rituals are as much about training your mind as your skin, teaching you the rhythm of attention, the persistence of repetition, and the calm focus needed to navigate your daily life. And so, as the village settles into the evening, as the hearth flickers and shadows lengthen across stone floors, you carry with you the slow lessons of skin care, the gentle, repeated movements, the careful attention to herbs, oils, and mixtures, the patient correction of minor errors, and the quiet, persistent rhythm of routine. These lessons, peculiar and drawn out, are calming in their repetition, comforting in their predictability, and quietly preparing you for the next stage of medieval beauty rituals, which will continue to unfold in equally slow, meticulous, and oddly fascinating detail.
In the life of a medieval girl, attention to appearance extends not only to hair, scent, and skin, but also to the teeth and breath that accompany you through each day. From a young age, you are taught that a pleasant mouth is a subtle, quietly important part of proper presentation. You observe older girls and women performing small, repetitive rituals to keep their teeth and gums in order, learning the slow, meticulous ways that hygiene was attempted in a world without modern toothpaste, toothbrushes, or mouthwash. The lessons are deliberate, patient, and slightly peculiar, perfectly suited to the rhythm of a quiet village life. Chewing sticks are introduced first. You learn to select small twigs from specific trees, often willow, boxwood, or cherry, peeling or fraying one end until it becomes a soft, fibrous brush. You rub your teeth slowly with these sticks, observing the gentle, repeated motions of older girls and women. There is no rush, only slow, deliberate repetition. Sometimes the sticks are dipped in herbs like mint, sage, or fennel, imparting a faint flavor and a modestly pleasant aroma to the mouth. You notice how the scent lingers, subtle but noticeable, and how it seems to signal diligence and attentiveness to anyone who might pass by. Scholars today debate how widely these sticks were used or how effective they were, but the consistent emphasis on slow, repeated care is clear across historical accounts. Occasionally, powders made from crushed herbs, ashes, or ground shells are used to clean teeth. You are taught to apply these powders carefully, using gentle rubbing motions with a finger or frayed stick, working methodically from one tooth to the next. The powders are gritty and sometimes unpleasant, but the repetition itself is calming, embedding rhythm and precision into each daily routine. Mistakes a bit too much powder, a rubbed gum, a missed molar are quietly corrected. Never harshly scolded, allowing you to practice patience, observation, and self-correction. Each motion becomes part of a steady cadence, a slow, persistent rhythm that shapes not just your mouth, but your attention to detail in other areas of life. Rinsing is done carefully as well, often with cool water from a bucket or small basin. You swirl the water gently, sometimes spitting into a cloth or over the side of a container, learning the quiet, deliberate motions of effective rinsing. Breath is subtly assessed, and small gestures covering your mouth when speaking. Avoiding foods that cause strong odors are gradually absorbed through repeated observation and practice. Even in these mundane, seemingly minor actions, the rhythm of repetition and gentle correction is ever present, teaching not only hygiene, but calm, deliberate attention to small details. You also learn about preventive herbs. Chewing on fennel seeds, parsley, or dried mint leaves is common, providing a faintly sweet or fresh aroma to the breath. The act is slow and repeated, taken gently over time rather than in a hurried fashion. You notice the subtle difference between flavors, the faint residue left on teeth, and the soothing, almost meditative nature of chewing deliberately, repeatedly, and quietly. These small rituals intertwine with other lessons in appearance, reinforcing a persistent rhythm of care, attention, and slow mastering. In some households, minor treatments for toothaches or gum pain are applied cautiously, using clove oil, crushed herbs, or even mild poultices. The application is deliberate, methodical, and slow, with careful attention to pressure, duration, and coverage. Even discomfort becomes part of the rhythm. Learning to tolerate mild irritation while performing careful, repeated movements teaches patience and persistence. Historical records show that treatments varied widely, and scholars continue to debate their effectiveness, but the repetition, attention, and deliberate pace of these practices are consistent across accounts, forming a key part of the daily routines of young, medieval girls. By the end of the day, your teeth are brushed, your breath subtly freshened, and your small rituals of mouth care have been repeated and slow. Deliberate motions that carry a quiet, meditative rhythm. Each gentle movement, rubbing, chewing, rinsing teaches patience, focus, and observation, embedding subtle lessons that extend far beyond hygiene. You begin to understand that appearance, in a medieval context, is cumulative. Hair, skin, scent, and now teeth all contribute to a perception carefully built through repetition and attention. And so, as evening falls over the village and the air grows cooler, you sit quietly, reflecting on the gentle, persistent lessons of mouth care. The rhythm of brushing, chewing, and rinsing blends with the slow cadence of your day. The faint aroma of herbs mingling with the distant smells of hearth, animals, and baking bread. These rituals are calming, comforting, and quietly instructive, shaping not only your appearance, but your awareness, patience, and subtle control of small details. They are a quiet prelude to the next stages of medieval beauty, which will continue to unfold in slow, meticulous, and strangely soothing ways, guiding you further along the gentle path of being a medieval girl.
As you grow a little older, the lessons in appearance expand beyond hair, skin, scent, and teeth to include clothing and the many layers that cover your small body. You begin to notice that garments are not simply practical. They are a slow, deliberate language of status, propriety, and subtle artistry. Each layer, each fold, each adjustment is carefully considered, repeated, and quietly corrected until it becomes second nature. You learn early that dressing is not just about covering yourself. It is a slow, meticulous ritual that trains your hands, posture, and attention to detail. Your day begins with undergarments, usually linen shifts that are simple, warm, and sometimes itchy. You fold them carefully over your shoulders and around your torso, smoothing wrinkles and adjusting seams. Each tug, each fold, each gentle press of fabric is repeated patiently, quietly teaching you rhythm and repetition. Over these, you add tunics, often woolen, heavier, layered for warmth and modesty. The layering is deliberate. First, the shift, then a tunic, sometimes a sleeveless overdress, and occasionally a belt to keep it all in place. The slow, repetitive motions, folding and adjusting clothing, create a rhythm that underlies the rest of your day, quietly guiding your movements and shaping your awareness. Dressing is interwoven with subtle lessons in posture. As you pull the garments over your head, fasten clasps or tie belts. Your mother or an older woman reminds you to stand straight, to fold your hands, and to move carefully. Even small misalignments, twisted hem, a tilted belt, or a bunching sleeve are gently corrected, often repeated until the rhythm of adjustment becomes second nature. You begin to notice that clothing is both practical and symbolic. It protects against cold, but it also signals propriety, attentiveness, and discipline. Each layer you add is an exercise in patience, slow repetition, and quiet observation. Occasionally, decorative elements are introduced. Simple embroidery, modest ribbons, or stitched patterns are folded into your garments, reminding you to handle fabric gently and precisely. Even small touches, like adjusting the placement of a ribbon or smoothing a seam, become part of the slow cadence of dressing. You learn that these small details, repeated daily, accumulate over time, creating an appearance that is neat, orderly, and subtly impressive. Scholars debate how widespread decorative touches were among ordinary villagers, are evident across accounts, suggesting that attention to detail was a nearly universal part of a young girl's education. Clothing is also adjusted according to activity. While carrying water, tending animals, or helping with chores, you fold hems, secure belts, and adjust layers so that movement is not impeded. These adjustments are slow, deliberate, and repeated until they feel automatic, a quiet rhythm embedded in your daily life. Even small errors, a sleeve snagged on a table, a hem brushing the dirt, become instructive, quietly corrected through repetition and gentle guidance. Over time, the act of dressing and maintaining clothing becomes almost meditative, a consistent cadence that accompanies every step and task. Layering also teaches endurance. Woolen tunics are heavy, shifts are itchy, and belts may press gently against your waist. You learn to tolerate these minor discomforts while performing each slow adjustment carefully. Each tug of fabric, each smoothing of a hem, each fold of a sleeve teaches subtle discipline, patience, and resilience. The repetition of these minor actions embeds a sense of rhythm and order into your day, quietly preparing you for the more elaborate clothing rituals you will encounter in adolescence. Seasonal changes add further instruction. In colder months, you layer additional tunics, sometimes add hoods or simple cloaks, and adjust belts to accommodate thicker fabric. In warmer months, layers are reduced, hems adjusted, and lighter fabrics handled carefully to avoid wrinkles or stretching. Every change requires slow, deliberate attention, reinforcing the quiet rhythm of observation, repetition, and careful adjustment that shapes your daily life. Even minor deviations, folds that crease too sharply, layers that shift awkwardly, corrected quietly, teaching patience and mindfulness. By evening, after a day of chores, observation, and careful adjustment, your clothing is arranged, layered, and neat. You sit quietly, feeling the subtle weight of each fabric, noticing the gentle tug of belts and the soft folds of tunics against your skin. The lessons of the day are absorbed slowly. The rhythm of layering, the repetition of adjustment, the gentle correction of minor errors, and the quiet attention to subtle details. Clothing, like hair, skin, and scent, becomes part of the meditative rhythm of being a medieval girl, teaching patience, discipline, and the strangely comforting cadence of repeated care. And so, as the village settles into evening and shadows lengthen across stone floors, you carry with you the slow lessons of clothing and layers. Each fold, each adjustment, each repeated motion has taught subtle skill, gentle discipline, and a quiet awareness of the world. The rhythm of these slow rituals blends with the other lessons of hair, skin, scent, and teeth, forming a continuous, calming cadence that prepares you for further rituals of beauty and propriety yet to come. As the lessons of appearance grow more detailed, you begin to notice that even the smallest parts of your body require attention. Nails, tiny and often overlooked, are slowly introduced as another element of propriety and discipline. From a young age, you are taught that clean, well-kept nails are a subtle marker of diligence, patience, and careful observation. The act of nail care is not rushed. It is slow, repetitive, and quietly meditative, a tiny ritual that fits seamlessly into the broader rhythm of daily life. Your mother or an older sister demonstrates the first steps. You use a small, smooth stone or a piece of metal to gently file, scrape, or clean under each fingernail. The motions are repeated carefully. A slow rub here, a gentle scrape there, moving deliberately from one nail to the next. Mistakes are quietly corrected. A scratch too deep, a nail left uneven, a bit of dirt still clinging. Each correction is gentle, almost imperceptible, teaching patience and bedding a rhythm that is calming and familiar. You begin to notice the faint, soothing sounds of scraping and filing, the subtle resistance of your nails, and the way your hands grow slightly warmer and more sensitive with attention. Occasionally, herbs or oils are applied to strengthen nails or soften cuticles. Rosemary, lavender, and crushed flowers are lightly rubbed into each nail, one by one, with careful, repetitive motions. You learn to apply just enough, avoiding excess that might leave a sticky residue, and to rub slowly so that each movement has effect. The process is deliberate, almost hypnotic, and becomes part of a quiet cadence that mirrors other lessons in appearance, hair, skin, scent, and clothing. Scholars debate how common nail oils or treatments were among ordinary villagers, but the emphasis on slow, repeated attention to small details is consistent in historical records. You are also taught to notice imperfections and irregularities. Nails that are uneven, broken, or slightly discolored are quietly observed, and you are instructed to correct them slowly over time. Even the act of filing a tiny edge becomes a lesson in patience. Each movement's scraping, smoothing, rubbing, adjusting is repeated until it becomes second nature. A small meditation that prepares you for the larger, more elaborate beauty rituals of adolescence. The smallest details, it seems, require the longest attention, teaching that care, repetition, and observation are virtues in miniature. Hands and nails also signal readiness for social interaction. When preparing food, handling household chores, or greeting neighbors. Clean and maintained nails are a subtle indicator of discipline and propriety. You notice how older girls adjust their hands, keep their nails tucked slightly, or arrange them carefully while performing tasks. Mimicking these small gestures, slowly and deliberately, you absorb lessons in rhythm, patience, and subtle social signaling. Even minor mistakes, a bit of dirt, a jagged edge, a slightly uneven surface are corrected over time, reinforcing the importance of repetition and attention to detail. The rhythm of nail care blends naturally with other daily tasks. While waiting for water to boil, bread to rise, or the sun to move across the sky, you engage in these slow, meticulous movements. Each scrape, rub, and polish becomes part of the day's gentle cadence. Even distractions, sibling running by, a sudden smell from the kitchen, a stray animal brushing past, do not break the rhythm. The repeated attention to tiny details forms a meditative layer atop the broader lessons in hair, skin, scent, and clothing. By the end of the day, your hands and nails are clean, smooth, and gently scented from herbs or oils. The faint warmth of friction, the subtle scent lingering from crushed petals, and the calm rhythm of repeated motion settle quietly in your mind. You recognize that these tiny, meticulous acts are not only about appearance, but also about training your attention, patience, and observation. Each small motion becomes part of a continuous, soothing cadence, a preparation for further beauty rituals, and a subtle reflection of the slow, methodical world you inhabit. And so, as the evening shadows stretch across the village and the air cools, you sit quietly, hands folded, nails smooth, reflecting on the gentle repetition of the day. The rhythm of scraping, rubbing, and polishing has become comforting, almost meditative, blending seamlessly with other lessons in hair, skin, scent, and clothing. These tiny details, peculiar in their meticulousness, are calming in their repetition, subtly shaping your awareness, patience, and presence. They quietly prepare you for the next stages of medieval grooming, which will continue to unfold in slow, deliberate, and strangely soothing ways. You sit cross-legged on a low wooden bench, the air faint with a mingled sense of beeswax candles, damp straw, and something faintly herbal that might be rosemary, or might just be old laundry. Tonight is not an ordinary night of combing hair or grinding powder from dried flowers. Tonight, someone has brought out the charms. In the corner, an older woman, part aunt, part neighbor, part self-appointed expert, is unwrapping a bundle of little trinkets tied together with a fraying red thread. She swears these are not toys, but protections against the creeping mischief of age, bad luck, and the occasional ill wish from a jealous rival. And in the Middle Ages, you take such things quite seriously, or at least seriously enough to pretend you do when she's looking at you like that. The first charm she shows you is a tiny pouch sewn from scraps of linen, set to hold crushed rose petals, thyme, and something vague she calls moon-caught dew. It's supposed to be worn around your neck to keep your cheeks youthful and your smile pleasing to strangers. Of course, there's no agreement among the village women about how long you must wear it, or whether moon-caught dew is even a real thing. The scholars, if they bother to write about such matters, might dismiss it entirely. But they also might point out that smelling nice was, in itself, a social advantage. The pouch then becomes less of a magical object and more of a portable perfume, though no one would dare say it out loud in case the magic took offense. Then there are the spoken charms, the little phrases murmured under the breath while doing everyday tasks. You might be told to say a line 3 times while brushing your hair, something about trapping beauty in the strands so it won't slip away. Another charm involves standing at a window at dawn, holding a silver coin to your lips, and reciting a short rhyme about the sun's light keeping your skin unblemished. Whether this works is debatable, but it does get you up early in facing the day before the bread burns, which is a kind of beauty advantage in itself. After all, no one looks their best when they've been caught dozing in and smelling faintly of scorched crust. Superstitions around bathing are particularly intricate. Too much washing, some say, will weaken your natural beauty. Washing away not just dirt, but the essential oils that keep your skin smooth. Others insist that rinsing your face in water collected from a running stream during the first thaw of spring will ensure a clear complexion for the year ahead. The trouble is that these beliefs don't match, and so you might find yourself secretly pouring icy water over your face wide just to be safe. No wash tub entirely the next week just to be safe. No one wants to anger both sides of a beauty superstition at once. Herbal talismans are another favorite. Lavender for calmness and pleasant scent. Marigold petals to brighten the skin. Sage leaves tucked in your shoes to prevent unattractive swelling of the ankles. This last one is particularly odd, but apparently someone once swore by it. And now, half the young women in the area are walking around with crunchy leaves in their footwear. It's hard to say if it works, but it does give your shoes a faint herbal smell, which is certainly better than the usual. The scholarly debate here, should anyone care, would revolve around whether the swelling prevention is medical, magical, or just the result of mild shoe padding. There are also rituals timed to the moon. You're told to trim your hair only when the moon is waxing, never waning, so it will grow back thicker and stronger. A lock of hair, wrapped carefully in cloth, might be buried at the edge of a field to return its strength to you when the season changes. Some girls even pluck a single strand and let it drift into a fire while whispering a wish for beauty, health, or, less romantically, fewer lice. Even here, practicality weaves itself into magic. If you can convince yourself that a small ritual will keep lice away, you might actually be more diligent about combing and checking your hair, which does more for your beauty than any whispered wish. Perhaps the most unusual superstition involves mirrors, or rather, the lack of them. Glass mirrors are rare and expensive, so most women use polished metal. But there's a belief that gazing too long into your own reflection will draw away your beauty, as though your face is a well, and the image takes sips when you're not paying attention. So, glancing quickly is fine, but lingering is dangerous. This might explain why medieval girls could dress quickly and leave without the endless mirror checking that plagues later centuries. Of course, the counter-belief says that smiling into your reflection will fix your beauty for the day. So the real challenge is figuring out which version your family follows. Magic could also come in the form of small ritual gestures. Twisting your hair a certain number of times while braiding it. Never stepping barefoot on cold stone, or crossing your fingers 3 times before putting on a headscarf. No one remembers exactly why these things started, but everyone agrees it's better not to risk it. Even if the logic has been lost, the habits remain, handed down like family recipes with missing steps and mysterious ingredients. You follow them partly because they're comforting, partly because they give you a sense of control in a world where beauty is fragile and accidents happen far too easily. The truth, which medieval physicians sometimes whispered but never fully admitted, is that many of these magical and superstitious rituals had effects not because of their mystical power, but because they encouraged regular care. A charm you wear around your neck, it keeps you from scratching at your skin. A whispered rhyme at the window, it makes you breathe deeply in the fresh air. Sage leaves in your shoes, they make you notice when your footwear is wearing thin. In this way, magic is less about bending the laws of nature and more about making small, steady improvements while telling yourself a story about how they work. By the time the evening ends, you have a sprig of lavender tucked into your sleeve, a ribbon tied loosely around your hair to bind your beauty in place, and a tiny pouch of rose-and dew that you're not entirely sure isn't just scented moss. You step out into the cool night air, half mused, half comforted, and wondering whether any of it will make the slightest difference. But in the strange, dim glow of the Middle Ages, the line between beauty, ritual, and quiet superstition is thin, and sometimes it feels better to believe, or at least to pretend, than to do nothing at all. You begin to understand that in the pursuit of medieval beauty, disasters are almost inevitable. Nothing works quite as expected, and even the most careful preparations can go sideways in ways that are both inconvenient and quietly humiliating. A simple attempt at a new hairstyle might collapse under its own weight, leaving you with an awkward mound of hair that sticks up at odd angles. You might spend an hour braiding and twisting, only to have a ribbon slip or a pin fall, and suddenly your carefully arranged locks look more like a nest than a coiffure. The older women nod knowingly when this happens, murmuring that every young girl must learn the slow lessons and graceful embarrassment. Burns are a common hazard. Wax from candles dripped onto your hands while sealing a charm bag, or hot tallow spilled while softening an ointment, can leave temporary marks and a sharp, immediate discomfort. Sometimes the skin reacts unpredictably to herbal mixtures meant to preserve youth. A salve made from crushed rose petals, egg whites, and a hint of honey may leave the skin smooth for a day, and then flare into a rash by evening. These minor disasters are treated with the same quiet solemnity of daily life. A mixture is a whispered, and you are reminded to try again tomorrow. Even the supposedly foolproof methods of hair care can betray you. Oils meant to smooth and protect your hair might attract dust, dirt, or the occasional small insect. A braid tied too tightly can leave a faint red line across your scalp. And yet, this teaches the slow art of adjustment. You learn to notice tension, to untwist carefully, and to reapply oil more sparingly. There is humor in the disaster if you notice it early, and gentle embarrassment if someone else points it out. You learn that modesty and humility are essential companions to beauty in the medieval world. Collapsing hairstyles are more than an aesthetic problem. They are a lesson in timing and materials. Veils and headdresses require pins and careful folding, often in multiple layers. One miscalculation, one overly enthusiastic tug, and the entire arrangement can unravel. Festivals and church services are particularly high-stakes occasions because a collapsed hairstyle is noticed immediately and whispered about quietly by neighbors. You learn to plan for disaster, rehearsing a hairstyle multiple times before any public appearance. Each mistake becomes a step toward mastery, teaching not only technique, but patience and calm under scrutiny. Accidents with makeup are another source of subtle tragedy. Ground powders, intended to whiten the face, can smudge or mix unevenly with water, leaving blotches. A brush that seems ordinary in size and shape may deposit far too much pigment in one stroke. The result is a face that is unevenly pale, blotchy, or streaked, a minor humiliation that is quietly corrected in private. The slow repetition and removal teaches girls the rhythm of careful attention, as well as the art of concealing imperfections without panic. Scholars debate whether these practices were ever truly effective for beauty, or whether their main purpose was teaching self-discipline and precision. Sometimes disasters are not entirely accidental. Sisters, friends, or curious siblings may poke, tug, or otherwise meddle, causing braids to loosen, ribbons to slip, or charms to fall. These interventions, though frustrating, are lessons in repair and composure. You learn to move deliberately, to anticipate interference, and to maintain dignity even when something small has gone terribly wrong. The humor in these mishaps is quiet, subtle, and often only noticed in retrospect, which reinforces the slow, observational pace of daily life. You also learn lessons in proportion and patience. Some creams and powders require repeated, careful application over days or weeks. A rash might force you to pause and reconsider a formula. A burned hand might require a slow process of cooling and soothing before continuing any beauty regimen. These interruptions, while frustrating, embed a rhythm of attention to detail. Each setback is a lesson. Patience is part of beauty. Discomfort is temporary, and repetition will eventually yield improvement. Mistakes with clothing or footwear can compound beauty disasters. A ribbon that is crooked, a shoe that slips off at an awkward moment, a stocking that tears. These small failures can draw attention in the same way a misapplied salve might. Learning to anticipate these failures is as important as learning to braid hair or mix ointments. Each misstep becomes a quiet instruction in vigilance, foresight, and humility, teaching girls that beauty is rarely effortless and often a matter of endurance. Even the small embarrassments of daily observation become lessons. A neighbor's glance that notices uneven lashes, a sibling's whispered joke about smeared ointment, or the accidental smudge of powder on the sleeve. All of these gently enforce the discipline of careful attention. You begin to internalize a slow, repetitive pattern of observation and adjustment, understanding that each minor failure is temporary, correctable, and an essential part of growing into competence. By the end of these trials, you learn to navigate disasters with calmness. You develop strategies for correcting errors before they are noticed. You adjust routines to avoid recurring problems. You quietly laugh at mistakes, knowing they are universal and inevitable. And perhaps most importantly, you carry with you the sense that mastery comes only through slow repetition, patience, and attention to the smallest details. The disasters themselves are part of the ritual, a subtle accompaniment to the steady work of grooming and appearance. And as the day fades and evening approaches, you look back on the series of mishaps, smudges, rashes, collapsed hairstyles, awkward ribbons, and minor burns, and notice something odd. The disasters are not purely failures. They are markers of growth. Each error has taught rhythm, patience, observation, and care. The small embarrassments are reminders that beauty is not merely about appearance, but about endurance and adaptability. You begin to see the humor in your struggles, the quiet satisfaction in correcting mistakes, and the comforting predictability of rituals that guide you through life, one repeated motion at a time. By nightfall, you have removed smudged powders, retied ribbons, and smoothed hair as best you can. You sit quietly, reflecting on the gentle chaos of the day, the minor disasters, and the lessons they imparted. In this quiet moment, you understand that medieval beauty is as much about learning to respond calmly to mishaps as it is about any ointment or powder. The slow, repetitive, and sometimes absurd rituals of the day, along with the disasters and lessons learned from them, weave together into a pattern of patient endurance that becomes a subtle kind of grace. You step outside your small, timber-framed home into a world that is both familiar and quietly intimidating. The cobblestones beneath your feet are uneven. The morning sun catches on the roof tiles, and the air is filled with the mixed scent of smoke, bread, and livestock. Every day in the medieval village is a parade of expectation. And if you are a young girl, your appearance carries more weight than it might seem. You have already learned the rituals of skin, hair, and charm bags. And now you must navigate the pressures of showing them to the world. Festivals, church gatherings, and the occasional trip to the market are stages on which beauty is quietly scrutinized. You walk slowly, adjusting your sleeves and smoothing a stray lock of hair, aware that every detail matters, at least in the perception of your neighbors. Even in routine encounters, appearances are observed. A chance meeting on the street might not seem significant, but the judgment of others is subtle and constant. Your posture, your cleanliness, and the faint scent of herbs clinging to your dress all speak to your household's attention to detail. Scholars debate whether these expectations were overt enforcement of social hierarchy or simply a reflection of communal life, where everyone noticed the same small details. Either way, you are taught to anticipate scrutiny. You learn to move deliberately, to speak softly, and to adjust each tiny imperfection before anyone comments, though often the observation is quiet and polite, rather critical. Festivals are particularly demanding. Even small celebrations require careful preparation. Hair must be braided and adorned, ribbons tied just so, and sometimes veils arranged in intricate patterns. Powdered faces, scented ointments, and polished shoes are expected, even if they come at the cost of discomfort. One misstep, a ribbon that slips, a ribbon bow slightly uneven, a braid loose at the back can elicit the softest of whispers from neighbors. These whispers are not meant to harm exactly, but they serve as gentle reminders of the communal attention paid to every young woman's appearance. You learn to smile and continue as if nothing is wrong, internalizing the subtle pressures with a calm, repetitive awareness. Church attendance is another arena of subtle expectation. On Sundays, you are not merely present to pray. Your appearance is a reflection of both your family and your understanding of propriety. Veils must cover the hair just enough to show decorum without hiding beauty completely. Shoes and stockings must be clean, hair combed, and hands free of obvious dirt. Even the act of crossing oneself is performed with care, ensuring that gestures are neither too hurried nor too exaggerated. In this context, public appearance, a quiet and repetitive series of actions designed to convey grace, modesty, and attentiveness simultaneously. Market trips carry their own set of pressures. The bustling crowd allows for fewer opportunities to control perception, but that does not diminish its importance. You learn to adjust your gait to avoid tripping in the muddy streets, to keep a steady grip on baskets so that nothing spills, and to lift your chin slightly to convey confidence without arrogance. Here, the lessons are practical as well as aesthetic. A clean and deliberate appearance signals competence, while sloppiness invites gossip. Even the smallest detail, a smear of flour on your cheek, a crooked ribbon, is noted, and the social rules of observation demand correction. You also notice the hierarchy of beauty subtly reflected in clothing and accessories. A neatly mended dress, carefully chosen colors, and small touches like a scented handkerchief or polished shoes mark social understanding. Scholars argue that this was partly about signaling status, partly about adhering to communal norms, and partly about protecting oneself from judgment or exclusion. You internalize these lessons as you prepare for public interaction, understanding that the appearance of care is nearly as important as the care itself. The pressure of public appearances teaches repetition and mindfulness. You learn to rehearse movements, how to sit, how to walk, how to adjust a sleeve or veil without seeming self-conscious. You notice how older women subtly correct younger girls, demonstrating gestures over and over until they become second nature. Each repetition, each quiet correction builds a rhythm to your day, ensuring that you move through social spaces with a calm, deliberate grace, even when the chaos of festival, church, or market threatens to overwhelm. At times, this social scrutiny produces small anxieties. You glance around, comparing your appearance to that of your peers. Hair slightly darker or lighter, hands a little rougher, feet less elegantly shod. You become acutely aware of minor differences, learning that perfection is not the goal, but steady attention and effort are. Observing others, correcting yourself, and repeating the rituals taught by older women, you gain mastery over the visible self, even if the mastery is quiet, invisible to casual onlookers. Despite the pressure, there are moments of gentle amusement. A hat slightly askew, a ribbon slipping mid-step, or a braid that refuses to stay put. These small imperfections bring a sense of shared humanity. You notice others smiling at their own minor disasters, and slowly you understand that the rituals and expectations, though rigid, are interwoven with humor, care, and tradition. Social pressure is thus both demanding and instructive, teaching discipline while fostering subtle bonds among young women navigating the same expectations. By the end of the day, after church, market errands, and festival visits, you return home carrying the weight of observation and expectation. You feel a quiet sense of accomplishment, knowing that you have performed the delicate balancing act required of you. Appearing proper without stiffness, neat without artificiality, and attentive without obsession. The repetition of preparation, observation, and correction is exhausting, yet it is a slow, patient instruction in grace under scrutiny. You realize that the lessons of public appearance extend beyond beauty itself. They teach poise, endurance, and the quiet confidence that comes from mastering rituals, both simple and absurd. And in the calm of evening, as the village grows quiet and the sun lowers behind timbered roofs, you reflect on the slow, deliberate practices of the day. Every smile, every adjustment, every carefully smoothed ribbon has been part of an intricate, almost imperceptible dance, a series of gestures and corrections that shape both appearance and character. Social pressure, once intimidating, becomes a framework for learning, repetition, and subtle mastery. You understand, at last, that beauty in public is not merely a matter of powders or hairpins, but of patience, observation, and a quiet resilience cultivated by daily ritual. You sit quietly in a corner of the kitchen, the warm smell of bread and herbs around you, watching an older woman move with a deliberate ease you have not yet acquired. She is your mother, your aunt, Ka, or perhaps a neighbor who has taken it upon herself to teach you the subtleties of womanhood, appearance, and ritual. The lessons are not taught in haste. They are repeated slowly, day, as though each movement and each word carries a hidden weight that only repetition can reveal. You notice the way she dips her fingers into a small bowl of crushed herbs before smoothing your hair. The way she checks a ribbon twice, then thrice, before declaring it acceptable. These gestures, seemingly minor, are the distilled wisdom of years, passed down through quiet demonstration more than lecture. The lessons cover everything from the practical to the peculiar. You learn which herbs keep skin soft, which ointments are safest, and which powders will leave a delicate glow without causing rashes. You notice the slow choreography of applying creams and salves, each finger movement measured, each dab repeated, each smoothing done in silence with careful attention. There's a rhythm to it, a quiet music in the repetition, and part of your education is learning to internalize that rhythm. The older woman rarely explains why a certain gesture is performed in a certain way. She assumes, rightly, that you will observe, mimic, and eventually understand. Scholars often debate whether this method of teaching was deliberate or simply practical, but its effectiveness is hard to dispute. Repetition ensures memory and mastery. Some lessons are ritualistic, almost to the point of absurdity. You are shown how to braid hair in multiple stages, sometimes over an hour before tying the final ribbon. A misstep at any stage may require undoing everything and starting again, which teaches patience more than anything else. You also learn about timing, the moon, the tides, and even the days of the week are said to influence when certain beauty routines are most effective. While these ideas may seem superstitious, they serve to instill discipline, careful planning, and the slow, deliberate pace that characterizes all your early training. Discipline is interwoven with caution. You are warned about the dangers of applying certain creams too thickly, burning yourself with hot wax, or overusing herbal concoctions. Sometimes these warnings come after minor disasters, such as rashes, burns, or smudged powders. The older woman nods knowingly, repeating the same instructions she once heard, and you realize that the failures themselves are considered valuable lessons. Patience and observation, she seems to teach, are as crucial to beauty as the ointments, charms, and powders themselves. Humor is subtly embedded in instruction. She tells stories of her own youthful disasters, the time her hair collapsed during a church festival, or when a potion left her face streaked in an unfortunate pattern. These stories serve a double purpose. They reassure you that mistakes are universal, and they offer gentle amusement that softens the monotony of repetitive training. You laugh quietly, sensing the absurdity in hindsight, while also absorbing the implied wisdom, resilience, discretion, and the ability to correct errors without panic are essential traits for a medieval girl. Observation becomes a central component of learning. You are encouraged to watch closely, noting the smallest details: how a ribbon is tied, the angle of a brush, the pressure used in smoothing creams. You practice alongside the older woman, repeating movements until they feel automatic. It is slow, meticulous work, but the repetition embeds knowledge more deeply than words alone ever could. Each repeated gesture strengthens your ability to navigate the complex expectations of appearance, subtly preparing you for public scrutiny and private care alike. The lessons are not confined to beauty alone. Older women impart guidance on etiquette, modesty, and social interactions, often intertwined with cosmetic instruction. You learn when to speak, when to observe quietly, and how to move gracefully. The rituals of appearance are inseparable from the rituals of behavior. In this world, beauty is a form of communication, a quiet signal of diligence, respect, and careful attention to communal norms. Mastering these lessons, you realize, is as much about social competence as it is about powders, ointments, or charms. Sometimes the older women emphasize small, secret tricks passed quietly to trusted apprentices. A hidden ribbon to keep a braid in place, a tiny dab of herb behind the ear for freshness, a discreet adjustment of a hem to avoid dirt. These minor interventions are lessons in both ingenuity and discretion. You learn that mastery involves not only following instruction, but also adapting subtly to circumstance, inventing small solutions, and carrying traditions forward with care. Each quiet act becomes part of a private language of practice, transmitted carefully from generation. Critically, patience is reinforced not only through repetition, but also through gentle endurance. A task that takes hours to complete, such as preparing a full hairstyle or applying multiple layers of cream, teaches you to move slowly, carefully. The older woman rarely hurries you. If she does, it is to demonstrate that haste can undo all progress. You internalize this lesson. The pace of learning is slow, and the attention to detail, no matter how minor, is paramount. The accumulation of small actions, repeated over days and weeks, forms a rhythm that structures life itself. By the end of your apprenticeship, under the watchful eye of older women, you carry with you more than technical knowledge. You have learned patience, observation, adaptability, resilience, and a subtle understanding of social nuance. Every mistake, every repeated gesture, every carefully timed ritual has contributed to a slow mastery that extends beyond appearance into the quiet art of self-management. The lessons are sometimes tedious, sometimes amusing, occasionally frustrating, but always enduring. And in the calm, reflective moments of your day, you understand that the slow, repetitive, and sometimes absurd teachings of older women are not merely about beauty. They are about cultivating and measured, resilient way of being in the world, one careful gesture at a time. By the time you reach the edge of adolescence, you have learned all the slow, repetitive rituals, charms, and careful observations required to navigate medieval beauty. But even the most diligent girl discovers that a life of constant instruction leaves small cracks for private invention. Secret tricks, small rebellions, and hidden indulgences become a subtle form of freedom. These acts are not grand gestures, not defiance in the face of authority. They are quiet, almost invisible maneuvers, the small rebellions that allow you to assert a sense of control over a world dictates every gesture, every brushstroke, every carefully measured motion. One of the earliest forms of secret rebellion is the slight adjustment of a hairstyle when no one is watching. You might undo a braid halfway through, letting it fall naturally rather than conform to the exacting instructions of an older woman. Perhaps you tie a ribbon loosely instead of following the prescribed knot, or tuck a stray lock behind your ear rather than weaving it perfectly into the weave. No one sees these small variations, but they feel liberating, a quiet assertion of preference amid the repetitive, slow rituals that dominate daily life. Other small rebellions involve creams and powders. You might add a pinch more of a scented herb, or skip a layer that is supposed to be applied in a certain order. Perhaps you dab a little extra onto your cheeks, creating a flush more vibrant than any charm predicted. These secret adjustments do not drastically alter appearance, but they provide a subtle thrill of agency. The knowledge that you are participating in your own beauty on your own terms, even within the tight constraints of medieval expectations. Sometimes rebellion takes the form of skipping a ritual entirely. A careful observer might notice that you do not dip your hands in milk before bed, or that a charm pouch is left untouched for a day. These acts are daring in a quiet sense. The rituals are embedded in family and social norms, and ignoring them carries both psychological and social risk. You do not flaunt these choices, nor do you advertise them. They are practiced in silence, providing a private comfort and a tiny but persistent reminder that autonomy exists even in the smallest gestures. Food, too, becomes a tool for minor rebellion. You might sneak a piece of fruit or a sweet morsel that is forbidden before certain beauty rituals, reasoning that the indulgence will not undo the effects of ointments or charms. These small acts of pleasure are a counterpoint to the tedious repetitions of ritual. They teach patience in a different way. You learn the art of timing, of savoring without being caught, and of finding joy in private moments while adhering publicly to expectation. Secret tricks often intersect with playful deception. A girl might tuck a tiny pinch of rose petals or lavender inside her sleeve, claiming it is for ritual purposes, while secretly enjoying the scent for comfort throughout the day. Another might use a hidden piece of ribbon to prop up a braid or keep a veil in place, unseen by the eyes of an older woman or the neighbors. These interventions are clever, small, and entirely self-contained. They are the private negotiations that allow a girl to shape her own routine within the framework of imposed instruction. At times, rebellion takes the form of speed rather than modification. You might perform a ritual with quiet efficiency, finishing it in less time than prescribed, feeling a small thrill at completing the prescribed movements while bending the invisible rules. The older women may not notice, or they may choose to pretend they do not notice, preserving the delicate balance of authority and independence. In this way, repetition becomes both constraint and opportunity, a rhythm that allows subtle manipulation for personal comfort. Humor is central to these private acts. You laugh quietly at your clever adjustments, your tiny defiance, and the knowledge that these small acts will remain secret. Even a minor victory, like preventing a stray lock of hair from being braided incorrectly or keeping a charm pouch unaltered, by a meddling sibling. Feels monumental in its own way. The humor is dry, subtle, and unspoken, enhancing the slow, calming rhythm of daily life while reinforcing a sense of control. These acts of rebellion teach patience, creativity, and discretion. You learn to navigate the tension between obligation and preference, between instruction and personal desire. The slow accumulation of small victories builds confidence that is quiet but real. Each secret trick is a lesson that rules can be followed while still asserting autonomy, that rituals can be respected without being fully controlled, and that small acts of ingenuity are valuable and satisfying. By the time the day winds down, you reflect on your accomplishments. Each tiny rebellion, each clever trick, each subtle indulgence has contributed to a private mastery of life within the larger framework of expectation. You have learned to balance ritual and rebellion, obedience and personal choice. The slow, repetitive, and sometimes absurd beauty routines, once rigid and daunting, now coexist with your own quiet creativity. You understand that life, like beauty, is a mixture of patience, endurance, and the occasional subtle assertion of self, carried out in small, deliberate gestures that are noticed only by you. In this way, the secret tricks and small rebellions of medieval girls serve as lessons in selfhood. They remind you that even in a world structured by ritual, charm, and social scrutiny, autonomy can exist in quiet, almost invisible ways. Every braid adjusted without notice, every charm pouch slightly repurposed, every ritual shortened with skillful precision is a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to navigate life with calm, deliberate subtlety. By nightfall, the candle flickers low, casting soft shadows across the room. You sit, reflecting on the day's small acts of rebellion, the tiny pleasures that came from bending rules without breaking them, and the slow rhythm of lessons learned in silence. You understand that the art of growing into womanhood in the medieval world is not only about following instructions, but also about discovering subtle freedoms, quiet joys, and private mastery amid a life of slow, repetitive, and sometimes absurd rituals. These secret tricks, these small rebellions, become part of your identity, as quietly enduring, as subtly influential as the charms and spells that frame your world. You begin to notice subtle changes in yourself that arrive not with fanfare, but with quiet insistence. The mirror no longer reflects exactly the same features. The curves and angles of your face and body shifting imperceptibly over weeks and months. You are aware, slowly and deliberately, that you are no longer the child who once played in the fields or watched from corners of kitchens. Each ritual, each charm, each repeated lesson from older women now carries a new significance. They are no longer just practices of imitation. They are tools for navigating the evolving body and self-awareness that adolescence brings. Your hair, once soft and pliable, begins to thicken, fall differently, and demand new methods of care. You adjust braids, ribbons, and oils with patience, testing the effects of each application. The older women nod, offering subtle guidance while allowing space for experimentation. You notice the pressure of public appearance more keenly than before, because your reflection now holds subtle hints of maturity. Festivals, church services, and market trips are no longer simply stages for beauty. They are arenas for demonstrating control, composure, and the quiet mastery of your changing self. Scholars note that adolescence in medieval life was not marked by clear milestones, but by these gradual, repeated encounters with social expectation, bodily awareness, and ritual practice. Skin, too, changes imperceptibly, yet insistently. Where once your cheeks were uniformly soft, you begin to notice unevenness, subtle blemishes, or shifts in tone. Each morning and evening, you apply creams and powders with more precision, adjusting for the new landscape of your face. Rituals that once seemed tedious now take on a dual purpose. They preserve the delicate balance of appearance, while also providing a comforting structure in a world where change feels both exciting and uncertain. You are learning that beauty is not simply static. It is responsive, adaptive, and intimately tied to self-awareness. Social observation sharpens during this period. You notice how peers respond, how older girls adjust their own appearance, and how the smallest detail can attract attention or scrutiny. The lessons from secret tricks and minor rebellions now have a new context. Subtle variations in hairstyle, slight indulgences in charms, or quiet adjustments in routine allow you to negotiate your presence in public with a sense of autonomy. You begin to understand the slow, cumulative effects of these small choices, that each measured action contributes behavior and self-presentation. Curiosity intensifies, too. You experiment with combinations of herbs, oils, and powders, testing how different sequences affect your skin, your hair, or the scent you carry through the village. Mistakes remain inevitable. A rash from a new ointment, a braid that collapses under its own weight, a charm misplaced in the night. Yet, these failures are less discouraging now. Evidence in the slow, methodical process of learning about your changing body and its needs. Each minor disaster is quietly recorded in memory, contributing to a growing skill set and resilience. Friendship becomes intertwined with learning. You observe peers performing the same rituals, sometimes sharing secret tips, sometimes quietly competing in subtle ways. The social rhythm of adolescence in this world is slow and layered. You internalize lessons from both observation and imitation, learning not just about appearance, but about social navigation, timing, and the gentle art of cooperation and discreet rivalry. You begin to understand that beauty and social skill are interwoven, each enhancing the other in subtle, repetitive ways. The older women continue their guidance, though now they allow more autonomy. Instructions are repeated, but you are trusted to make small adjustments, experiment quietly, and apply judgment based on accumulated experience. This gradual release of control is part of the education. You learn responsibility, discretion, and the patience to notice what works and what does not. Mistakes are no longer merely embarrassing. They are expected, analyzed, and corrected in a calm, measured rhythm. Sleep, too, becomes a ritual in adolescence. Nights are often filled with reflection on the day's successes and failures, the minor triumphs and small humiliations. You trace the slow passage of your body and self through quiet thought, noting changes in mood, energy, and appearance. The repetitive routines of bathing, applying ointments, and arranging hair are not merely preparatory. They are opportunities to practice observation, mindfulness, and self-care. Over time, these moments instill a deep sense of continuity, a reassurance that the slow passage of adolescence, though full of change, is structured and navigable. Occasionally, the pressures of appearance, social expectation, and ritual clash with impulses for freedom and spontaneity. You might skip a ritual for private comfort, indulge in a small treat, or experiment with a new hairstyle in secrecy. These acts of rebellion are now more intentional, guided by growing self-awareness and confidence. They are measured risks, small negotiations between obedience and personal agency, reflecting a subtle mastery over your world and body. Each choice, repeated and refined, teaches you resilience, discretion, and the quiet joy of private autonomy. By the end of these years, you notice the slow, cumulative effects of all lessons learned. Ritual, observation, secret tricks, social navigation, patience, and small rebellion. Adolescence has transformed the body, sharpened the mind, and deepened understanding of both personal and social expectation. The slow rhythm of medieval life, the deliberate pace, the repetition of gestures, the quiet attention to small details, has trained you not only in beauty, but in endurance, observation, and subtle control. You carry these lessons forward, aware that mastery is never absolute, quietly, and with infinite patience. Evenings bring reflection. You look in the mirror, noting the curves, angles, and subtleties that mark your passage from girlhood toward womanhood. Every cream, every charm, every secret trick, every ritual, all of it has contributed to a careful, deliberate knowledge of yourself. You understand, at last, that the slow passage of adolescence is less about dramatic transformation than about patient observation, quiet experimentation, and the accumulation of small, measured gestures. In this understanding lies both skill and comfort, a sense of control over a world that otherwise demands endurance and adaptation in nearly every act. As the candle flickers low and shadows lengthen across your room, you sit quietly, acknowledging the slow rhythm of growth, the gradual mastery of ritual and appearance, and the private triumphs achieved along the way. Adolescence, in this medieval context, is a patient, repetitive, and sometimes absurd journey, one that teaches endurance, subtlety, and calm mastery of self. It is a lesson that beauty is not only external, but also the quiet cultivation of patience, awareness, and small, deliberate choices over the slow passage of time. As the day comes to a close and the village settles into quiet, you sit alone, reflecting on the long, deliberate journey of learning what it means to be a medieval girl. The rituals, the creams, the powders, the charms, and the repeated instructions from older women all drift through memory like soft, unhurried waves. You notice how much of it was repetition, the slow, patient practice that shaped not only appearance, but character. Every minor disaster, every secret trick, every carefully measured gesture was a step in mastering not only beauty, but endurance, observation, and subtle control over your world. You realize that the absurdity and the meticulous care were inseparable. Hair that collapsed, rashes that flared, or powders that smudged were not failures in the strictest sense, but gentle teachers, reminding you that mastery comes slowly with humor, patience, and repetition. Secret tricks and small rebellions were equally essential, teaching autonomy, discretion, and the quiet satisfaction of shaping life on your own terms, even within rigid expectations. These lessons, often repetitive and sometimes seemingly trivial, are the essence of medieval learning, a combination of ritual, observation, and adaptation, repeated day after day until it becomes second nature. In this quiet reflection, you also notice a thread of continuity connecting you to the generations before you. Mothers, aunts, and mentors who repeated the same gestures and instructions, who understood the rhythm of ritual, and who quietly shaped young girls into women capable of patience, subtlety, and resilience. Even in the strange, superstitious, and sometimes inconvenient beauty practices, there is a gentle wisdom that endures. Finally, you breathe slowly, feeling a soft, calming rhythm in your body and mind. Medieval beauty was never simply about appearance. It was about learning to move deliberately, to respond calmly to mishaps, to cultivate patience, and to find quiet joy in small, repeated actions. And as the candle flickers low and shadows stretch across the room, you close your eyes, carrying forward the slow, enduring lessons of a world where even the most absurd rituals offered comfort, mastery, and subtle delight.